Welcome back, viewers. You are still tuned into Prime Live, and I'm so excited to welcome back to Prime Live. With us is this beautiful and amazing young woman who is a seasoned physiotherapist, Pilates instructor, who has a particularly focus on musculoskeletal health. She has over 5 years of experience in the private sector and has been helping people when it comes to injuries, postural correction, as well as through a very holistic approach. Now, today's conversation with Nicky Cunningham is a very important one at that. It is a Tuesday, so we are choosing health and we are choosing wellness. And tonight we'll be talking about women's health, and we'll be focusing particularly on pregnancy as well as postpartum recovery. Nicky, thank you so much for joining us once again on Prime Live.
Great, thank you so much for having me.
Now, I'm excited about this conversation, particularly when it comes to postpartum recovery. We talked about this a little bit in the introduction about how everyone is so excited for the new baby and the new family member, but the mums who are in recovery tend to get pushed aside a little bit. And postpartum recovery is something that is incredibly important. Can you talk to us a little bit more about the importance of postpartum recovery and making a concerted effort towards your recovery postpartum?
Yeah, so basically, as you've said, we often just walk into the room and greet the baby before we've even greeted the mom. And she's gone through a lot. She's gone through basically 10 months of being pregnant, goes through childbirth. And then on the other side, everyone kind of goes, yay, welcome to the world. And then mom lies there. So it's really good to consider that you'd have gone through a big journey. Your body has gone through fluctuating hormones, your body has changed, and it is a beautiful thing to be able to bring life into the world, but it's a strenuous thing. So it's about taking it easy on yourself, and giving yourself a break, and giving yourself time in order to recover from this big journey. I think everyone sees how these changes in the baby come, where the head starts to be a little, or the neck starts to be a little bit stronger, and it's all very exciting. But that process of being 9 months, 10 months pregnant, you essentially need to allow yourself 9, 10 months, up to 12 months to kind of feel normal again, hormonally, not even just thinking about the physical aspect. So from an activity point of view, recovery for a mom, we like to use the 5-5-5 rule. If someone has the ability, and means to be able to do it, but to be able to kind of give yourself that chance of 5 days in bed, 5 days on the bed, and then 5 days around the bed, to try and limit yourself in what you're doing around the baby, versus housework, working, that kind of thing, that initial phase of recovery. So it's so important, just the whole aspect of recovery, mentally, physically, emotionally. Yeah.
And when it comes to postpartum recovery, and like you were talking about now, we tend to neglect the mom, and we are, overwhelmingly excited by the different phases that the baby will go through as they grow and as they change. But when it comes to postpartum recovery, for the moms and the dads out there, and for expecting mothers and fathers out there, when it comes to postpartum recovery, what are some of the things that you would like for them to keep in mind and to consider doing when it comes to the recovery process? When it comes to whether that be movement or nutrition, or just some tips and tricks on the extra things that they can do to help with mom's recovery?
All right, so getting into it, recovery is so key. So the key things for those are, as you mentioned, the nutrition side, which is not my forte, but if you are planning on breastfeeding, a nice, what's it, fun fact, is that it takes almost 450 to 550 calories just to feed your baby in the day, and throughout the night. So you need to up your nutrition. Hydration, always so key. So I think they recommend around about 8 glasses of water a day. For someone that's breastfeeding, 16 glasses. So really important. And then physically, what you can do, and I often get asked, how soon can you start activity? How soon can you get back on the bike if you're a cyclist or a runner, getting out on the trails? But it is personal. It depends on how you carried, how you gave birth, any prolapses or stitches or anything that might have occurred afterwards. And bearing in mind you've got a baby to look after, so you're waking up constantly throughout the night and that kind of thing. But getting sleep, so important for that recovery. So sleeping when baby sleeps, I know it's a lot harder done than said, but sleep is really important. But you can always start with the small exercises. It's the breathing correctly, which we think, I've breathed since the day I was born. But there are different ways that you are able to breathe, and that deep breathing, that belly breathing, is so important because we've sat with babies sitting up against our ribs and into our rib cages for a good, depending on how you carry, but a good 2 or 3 months. And so you need to learn to breathe again. So I would start with breathing exercises, those pelvic floor exercises. You can start from the get-go. But if you're really worried about it, it is good to go to see a women's health specialist, as well as a physiotherapist that would be able to do an internal and things like that, where you can actually get a genuine assessment of the area that you are concerned about.
Thank you for sharing that. And something we alluded to in the introduction of the show is also maintaining a good sense of health and wellness during your pregnancy as well. What are some health tips that you would share, especially when it comes to movement and exercise for expecting mothers, that might help a postpartum scenario?
I love this because it's always so nerve-wracking. We kind of find out we're pregnant and we stop all the things that we are um, doing and thinking, okay, I have to change my whole lifestyle for this baby. But actually, the key thing is to do what you have been doing, but maybe at a lesser level. You can think of your heart rate. I mean, heart rate hasn't really been looked at too much with pregnancy, but to look at heart rates and say, okay, well, if I was going at a 160, 170 beats per minute, now I can look at a 130, 120. But with pregnancy, it does let you know if you've done too much. So it is good to listen to your body. If you're feeling like, oh, I can give it a little bit more today, or I need to take it a little bit back, it's perfectly fine. Also, what you can start with and add to your routine is mobility of the hips, mobility of the lower back, just so that you can reduce some of those pains within the lower back. It's very specific for each person. Some people experience quite severe lower back pain, and that's where those mobility exercises might come in a little bit earlier for you. But really, it's all about listening to the body. So you can continue running if your doctor has allowed you to continue running. If you're feeling like you do your Pilates, just make sure that you're getting your instructor to give you those do's and don'ts. A sit-up is not ideal at a certain point. But with the hormonal changes, it's just to be aware that you do get relaxin, which is added to your body, and that can affect your ligaments and tendons, which can put you at a little bit of a higher risk for injuries. So with your high intensity exercises, you're changing direction. I mean, I've had moms, they can play hockey, change of direction all the time. Up until 8 months, they were just feeling comfortable to do so. So it really is about listening to your body, but bearing all of those do's and don'ts too.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's very, very vital information and insight that you've shared with us this evening for expecting moms, and the kind of movements and things like that that are safe and available for them to do that will help them in the postpartum state as well. But when it comes to Pilates, you're of course a Pilates expert, and we spoke the last time about some of the wonderful benefits there are of Pilates. Now, talk us through kind of what are options that are available for expecting moms as well as for postpartum recovery when it comes to Pilates, as well as the importance thereof of pelvic floor and rebuilding those pelvic floor muscles after giving birth.
Exactly. I like the adding in the pelvic floor there, because that pelvic floor is essentially holding the baby throughout this process. And as the baby gets heavier, so our muscles also tend to have to stretch and move in order to accommodate the baby. So with Pilates specifically, you can really look at a lot of breathing exercises. So that helps with all sorts of well-being, emotionally, physically. It's really great to get that added breath work. As well as with Pilates, it's very modifiable. So to be able to do, you don't need to do a crunch in order to do Pilates. The sit up where you come from the floor all the way up, bringing your chest up. But you can work a lot into prone, which again gives you a little bit more, or 4-point, where you're on your hands and knees, where you just get that activation for that deep inner core that isn't really affected by the stretching tummy. It needs actually that support through breath. And then that's during pregnancy. You can get all those activations. You can work your legs. You can work your intrinsic muscles of your feet. You can work your arms. Your arms are going to be needed to be strong for that baby when it comes out. But then also, postpartum is also very important in helping your muscles to come back together, because obviously you've now stretched. And so when you're trying to do these activations, it's about getting that inner core to activate as well as the outer core. And with that, certain exercises like rotational exercises with breath and with the Pilates, you just gradually and very gradually get back into the exercises you were able to do before pregnancy. And so Pilates assists with that, especially if you wanted a one-on-one session where it's really just quite focused on you, and you can get those exercises quite specific, and then you can get into a group class, which helps us all emotionally, just to get that presence of other people and your own time, which I think sometimes we can get a bit lost and feel a bit guilty if we decide to go and have a class and be by ourselves for 45 minutes, can you imagine? And leaving your baby with someone, or possibly, yeah, your partner, or if you're lucky, or mom, or anything like that. So it's really important just for the whole picture.
I couldn't agree more. I think as women, we tend to forget that you can't pour from an empty cup. And I love that you highlighted the importance of also putting yourself first, especially as an expecting mother or a postpartum scenario as well, making sure you do take the time out for yourself and make sure you are prioritizing your health and well-being. But Nikki, thank you so much for your insight this evening. I think conversations around women's health are so incredibly important. I mean, we know that women's health is gravely neglected when it comes to research and access to information. So I think this is such a powerful conversation, giving our viewers, that much needed access to this kind of information that we wouldn't necessarily get elsewhere. So thank you so much for your insight and for all the information you shared with us.
Thank you.
Viewers at home, that was Nicky Cunningham, a physiotherapist as well as a Pilates expert. Our conversation today was, of course, centered around women's health, and that, of course, being pregnancy as well as postpartum recovery. I hope you took away a lot of insight and information for any expecting mothers out there and any mothers who are now in the postpartum recovery phase. Do make sure that you are prioritizing your health and wellness as well. But on that note, it is time for us to head over to Salah, and we'll see you when we come back.